Good morning, ShitChester. How are you?
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me onto the show.
Oh, absolute pleasure. No, we're delighted to have you on board. Yeah, as many people, I am desperate to know what's the reasoning behind ShitChester. When did you start it, and what was the inspiration?
Yeah, so the it all goes back to 2013. That was when the account was first created, and I will say that it wasn't actually me that created it. It was my friend that did set it up, and then later on I took it over. But I've been involved in it from the start, and I think at that time it was just something to do, just a bit of fun, to take our minds off things in the world. And as it evolved, I was kind of inspired. There was an account called Shit London, which is still active, and that was sort of showcasing unusual sights around London, funny things, graffiti, stuff like that, which I was a big fan of. And then over time, it evolved into a much more sort of positive exploration of Chester. What was going on, what was the good things that were happening as well as the bad things, and it was more critical uh, when it first started. There was quite a lot of back in 2013. I don't think Chester had such a great sort of image, and what the one phrase that people were using at the time was cultural desert. The Odeon uh, closed a few years before. We didn't really have a professional theatre. There was, I would say, a low sort of view of the city and how we viewed ourselves. And the account in its early days definitely tapped into that kind of vibe, and attracted a lot of support for that reason. And then, as it evolved, I sort of made it as positive as I could. I went out, I went started attending events, finding out what was going on, what was the good stuff that we had for us, besides all the obvious great aspects that we have in the city. Things like the river, the roads, etc., the walls, all those kind of things that people already know about, sort of cherish. What was going on in other places, what was going on culturally, what sort of work was being done behind the scenes, what was coming up in the future. So if you go back to 2013, there was many developments sort of in the pipeline. Story House was being talked about at that time, and I personally didn't think that was ever going to happen, as people have thought about many developments over the years. And then there was talk about a new bus station, etc., things like that was all sort of on the cards at the time. And then obviously the Northgate development's been on the cards for many, many years. So that was, there was some of the things that happened at the time. Um, we guess, yeah, we did tap into that feeling, and then really became a lot more prominent in the autumn of that year, 2013, in which I had a falling out with the leader of the council at the time. So that's Councillor Mike Jones. This is quite well known for followers of the account. And he criticised the account and said that it was negative, and he said it had a negative name, as people have said over the years, which, some people will say it does, or not. I'm not sure. But he said the account was negative and I should change the name. And I obviously didn't like being told what to do. And I said, I don't think so. We're not going to change it. We had this big fallout online. And then the next day, local media were calling me up wanting to speak to me. And it became, a news story at the time. And our following sort of grew from then on. And
Right.
I guess in a way, we became a bit of I don't know, like an anti-hero, I guess, or you
Mm.
know, it's hard to say how people view it specifically, but it was that was a good time, and I'd say that row really brought us to a lot more public attention.
And interesting how it's panned out, isn't it? So what started almost like giving people a voice to say what they weren't happy about. I think if you haven't got
Yeah,
that channel for people to say what they're not happy about, and if you skirt over everything and say it's all amazing, but that's not the feeling on the ground, then it's very hard to actually know what people want who live in the city.
yeah, exactly, and that's one thing that I'm proud of, that it has given people a voice, and in many cases, it's a direct link to
Yeah.
people not public. So I've got a lot of followers on the council, a lot of followers from across different organisations and groups in the city, and people can see from the feed what is working, what isn't working, And while I do, cherish Chester and think it's a great place, I'm not going to say it's perfect, as some people do. There's many issues that need working out, and that kind of realism, the contrast between the bad and the good. That's what appeals to me, because to me, life is a mixture, of the happy and the sad, the good moments, the bad moments, and the city is always changing, so there's always stuff coming up, there's always stuff on the decline. We can see that now, but it's just about embracing what is there, I guess.
And are you from Chester? Is it where you were born and grew up?
All my life I've lived here, yeah. So, again, I have seen the city change quite a lot, and like many people, I have memories of, wasn't it better in such and such a time, etc. Which nostalgia is a big factor in Chester life, I think, obviously, because we're so sort of tied in with our history, and again, it's so important. But I do think we need to look forward a bit as well. But yeah, I do share that kind of sometimes rose-tinted view. Everything was better in such and such a year. And you go further back, and people are always saying, "Oh, the old market. We love the old market." Back in 1967, etc. Bring back the trams, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, nostalgia is a key part of it, and I guess it is of anyone's life when they look back at things.
Yeah, and I think your account, I mean, Twitter as a platform is so rapid with news, with things being shared, and actually it gives people an outlet if there is. I'd imagine that you're one of the accounts that's tagged if something's happening in Chester that people are concerned about.
Yeah, all the time. So it can be hard keeping up with it, but it's something that I enjoy, and I do feel it's a bit of a responsibility there to share what's going on in the news. And obviously, I will share official news stories on my blog, which I started in 2014, and I'll share council information, I'll share cultural information, and the blogs are one aspect that I particularly enjoy doing, because I've always sort of been interested in writing, and in terms of that, sharing information is a big responsibility that I have, and one that I enjoy.
The blog's great, and I love the fact that the blog gives people a voice, it gives people a platform, and I'd imagine that it's helped businesses grow, really, hasn't it, by having that, when you interview people with businesses in Chester, it's almost like they must get quite a bit of exposure from being on the blog.
Yeah, I do enjoy talking to businesses, and I don't do it for the money or anything like that. I just do it for the love and wanting to genuinely help people. I've done quite a lot of work with businesses over the years, new places that have opened, etc. Done one recently with Lee Louise, which was really interesting to talk to the people there about their history.
Gosh, that's been so long since I can remember that one, hasn't it?
40 years at least they've been there, and that was a really interesting one to do, and that got a lot of hits. But yeah, I do enjoy the blog, and that's something I want to keep on doing. I've recently started doing a weekly news update as well. So at the minute, I think people are unhappy about some of the news organisations in Chester and the sort of direction they're taking. So ideally in the future, I think what Chester needs is an independent news organisation, sort of maybe at a higher level than what I do. I think if we look at somewhere like Wrexham.com, I think they do a fantastic job. And there's a lot of stuff that happens here that just isn't reported or mentioned. So the weekly news blog that I do now, that just gives me a bit of a catch up on stuff that may have been missed, or smaller stories that people may find interesting.
Yeah, you've touched on some of the things that are in development in Chester at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot of businesses that have struggled with the pandemic. So I think when you see the high street, it is in transition phase, isn't it? And it'll be interesting to see with the closure of Debenhams. Obviously, that's left a massive gap in our city. What would you love to see? Is there something in particular that you would really love to see happen with you?
There is obviously, because I do a lot of walking around and spotting.
Yeah.
This business is closed, this business is gone, etc. I found another one yesterday that's recently closed. I'd like to see more attractions, and I think that's something that maybe higher up the government need to look at. I know they're looking at making planning permission easier, possibly to have more residential. And there's some units like BHS has been empty for 6 years now. So something definitely needs to be done with a high street strategy nationally.
Yeah.
I would like to see more tourist attractions, and we have got some good ones that have opened recently. We've got Sick to Death, which I definitely champion, and the Roman Discovery Centre that's been taken over as well and will be open soon. Obviously, we will have the attraction of the Northgate development with its cinema, which I think the city has sort of cried out for a long time. Everyone was sad when the Odeon went, so that'll be good for tourists and locals to use when that opens next year. I do think in terms of, I like the Grosvenor Museum, but I think a bigger museum would be great to see, something that really showcases the whole history of the city. I don't know how viable that is at the minute, but it's something I would love to see. And an art gallery is another thing that's been talked about for a long time. We do have Chester Visual Arts who are working very hard on a strategy to make that happen, and they've done some sort of pop-up experiences over the last few years. So they do a great job. An art gallery, in terms of shops, I do agree it is going to be a challenge for people. We see that all over, not just in Chester, which is something that does annoy me because people are constantly saying on social media, there's nothing left in Chester, etc. There's nothing left. But, you know, no city's got a Debenhams now, so we're not unique in that respect.
Really.
So a bit of realism there would be great. But yeah, we need some kind of strategy. I'm not sure what it is, possibly not qualified to comment on that one.
I think it'd be nice to see some smaller independents. I think offering things that are a bit different. I would like to see that personally, because I think with the closure of Debenhams and, like you've mentioned, BHS, it kind of shows that people's demands are changing. You can get all that kind of stuff online, whereas actually the independent shops, I suppose the struggle they've got is the rates in Chester. So maybe that's something we can look at.
I mean, there is new independents opening. There was a new ladies' clothes shop that's opened on Frodsham Street yesterday, for example. And there's a new florist opening on St. John Street. So I do like to keep a track of what's going on as well. But yeah, definitely, I think people in Chester do have a love for independence. And I did a blog, was it last year or the year before? I don't know, in which people submitted their favourite independents, and I think we got about 50 out of them. So that was good to do, and it does make you realise how much there is. But as we always say, you do have to shop there.
Yeah.
And I just remembered more. I mean, there's been a number of new bakeries that have opened recently. There's a Polish bakery on Brook Street. There's Kookaburra Bakehouse, which is just off Watergate Street. So there's loads of stuff happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, things closing gives opportunities for new things to open. So it's a natural cycle, isn't it, in some respects? I think one of the things I hear a lot from people is, because I do love going into Chester, I'm from Chester, live just outside of Chester, but I do enjoy going into Chester. But I know a lot of people say, I just can't be bothered with the parking in Chester. I'd rather go to Broughton Park. I'd rather go to Cheshire Oaks. What you thought? Obviously, that must be something you've given some consideration to over the years.
Again, I think we do need to be realistic. I'm not sure which city centres of our sort of stature offer free parking.
Yeah.
So if people are talking about York, it's certainly not free there. If people want to go to Liverpool or Manchester, you don't get free parking there. So there is going to be some sort of, you know, payoff for you using the city centre. I personally, don't really enjoy the retail parks. I don't think they've got any soul or atmosphere, but that's just my view. If people just want to shop, then that's great, but you don't get that kind of feeling of a community. You're not going to see a busker on Cheshire Oaks. Unless it's someone they've paid to be there, which is a different matter. You're not going to see the town crier at Cheshire Oaks, or you're not going to see many of the random sites that we see in the city. Because this is a living, breathing place, isn't it? And lots of stuff goes on. I do understand people don't want to pay high prices for parking. There has been some free parking initiatives recently. I know the racecourse are doing one, and they certainly did one during the pandemic as well to help out key workers. The council car parks, I don't view them as being that expensive. I think people see stuff online again, they see the worst possible price, and they jump to the conclusion that all the parking is that expensive. But I do understand, recently we've had parking charges introduced for Foregate Street and City Road, which has not been popular. And this is something that, again, the council definitely need to look at in terms of public transport provision, which isn't always great. Park and rides, a lot of criticism about that. But
the parking had been introduced in City Road, but actually I kind of thought that was maximising the space a bit more, because I think it was only half an hour prior to that, which is no use to anybody. Kind of felt, unless you're just popping into one of the office, it was always empty, that road, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's
And you have 3 after 3, which again is a huge bugbear for people. And people always saying bring back 3 after 3. I mean, there's a few business holders that I spoke to that said it didn't really help out that much, because if you're only going to be there for, you know, an hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for everyone, so I have my own views, but I will say that there's been a lot of criticism about that over the years since that was removed. But then when 3 after 3 was axed, the overall fees were reduced. So there we have it.
Yeah, and you touched on the race course earlier. That was something I was going to ask you about. I know you did a recent interview, and there was a bit of frustration around the chaos that the race course can bring on race day. I mean, obviously it brings massive benefits to the city. It brings a lot of people in, it brings people outside, it brings revenue, but it can also bring the kind of antisocial behaviour. Any thoughts on that as to how they could help?
I think, sadly, the races are, as well, sadly or not, depending on the view, the races are a part of Chester life, have been for years. People don't like the unfortunate things that happen sometimes as a result. And I would fully sympathise with that. It is a very difficult one, because this is a situation, I'm trying to be diplomatic now, that's been going on for many years. Again, some people don't like the races, some people do. I don't think you'll ever get an agreement on it, but as we've seen during the pandemic, if it's a choice of having empty streets, as I quite often saw when I was, you know, to and fro in from places, and having silence on streets, I'll take a noisy street personally, and I'll take some drunk people singing songs. And I think maybe that's what people need at the minute, a bit of release, especially after everything we've been through. But I mean, obviously, I'm not going to condone antisocial behaviour. I know there's business that have been affected in the past. And as you say, the recent blog we did with Cavino, the owner did speak about some of the issues he's had.
Yeah, which is a shame. It's difficult, isn't it? But I think, unfortunately, like anything like this, like the football that we witnessed, it is majority of people go, have a good time, behave, go home, but we remember the minority, don't we?
That's perfectly put. Yeah, it is going to be the minority of people. I think most people that go to the races just want to have a good time, and you know, I can't begrudge people of that. That's all anyone wants to do in life, isn't it? But some people will take it too far.
Do you think the general feel, and I know you can't necessarily answer for everybody, but I know you're in communication with a lot of people in Chester, do you think generally people that are from Chester are proud of their city? The reason I ask it, that I had a recent trip, even more so since the recent bombings, you know, the B icon is everywhere. They've got a real symbol, a real brand, real unity. And that's where I just wonder whether, is that something you feel that we're lacking as a kind of identity, Chester?
I think I would, I echo that. I do think there is a lack of unity. I think there's a lot of disagreement, as you would get in any democracy. You know, it's healthy, isn't it, that people don't agree. Many controversial topics happening all the time. You know, we've had the bus lanes recently and the toxic rows everyone was having over that. We have things like D House and the long-running amphitheatre saga. We have the current Northgate development upsets. You know, some people aren't happy about that. Some people are. Some people want the Northgate development. Some people hate it. You know, let's not build it, etc. And there's been people saying that for quite a while. In terms of pride, I think I don't think it's 100%. I think there is quite a lot of negativity here. Some of it is driven by false stuff on social media. Again, when people say, oh, we haven't got any independents left, you know, that's not true. When people say the parking is £20 an hour or whatever, not true. You know, look around, there are options. When people say we don't care about our heritage, as someone has said to me this morning, you know, there's been a lot of work done. The years that I've been active, I've seen a lot of new developments. I've not seen a lot of walls repaired. I've seen a lot of, you know, exhibitions and innovations and stuff that people are trying really hard to do, and stuff that people are trying to bring to the city. But I do think there's a strong negative element in there, and I think people see the image of a boarded up Debenhams, and they take that to sort of represent the city as a whole, and then there's no sort of allocation of responsibility. People are blaming the local council for business rates, which again is not anything to do with them. And it's something that I tried to sort of say over the years. But you always saying, oh, the council don't set business rates, which has become a real cliche of my account now. Things like that. So I definitely feel pride. I think we have a lot to offer visitors, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do here for people, definitely. I have a lot of events in my calendar, for example, things to go to. New businesses that are opening, charities. Kids Bank Chester, for example, just moved into new premises. They're going to have an event in September. We've got the Roman Centre reopening at the end of this month. I could go on, loads of stuff. We've got Inflatable, which has just opened in Hanbridge, which is a great attraction for kids. And I actually know the owner. He's been rushed off his feet there in the couple of weeks that they've been open. So there's loads to be proud about. I think people's eyes are sometimes closed. They don't appreciate what they have.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think actually sometimes people who say, oh, it's not great Chester, or have perhaps always lived in Chester, still living in Chester. So you have to question, well, you're not moved away, you're still here. But I think some of the tourist attractions, if you've always lived in Chester, for example, we're doing some work with the cathedral at the moment. They've got an event. Yeah, they've got the event on there, Making Tracks, which is brilliant for the kids over summer holidays. Go in. Pete Waterman's pretty much there every day, so it's your chance.
I have met him, yeah. But the cathedral, I say, people take that for granted. How many people go in? You don't have to pay to go in, and I always find new stuff in there when I go and visit. So if you open your eyes, there's definitely loads to be proud about. I went for a walk on the meadows yesterday. We're so lucky. We've got this massive green space, 10 minutes from the city centre.
Is the little boat going over, the little ferry from Bolton at the moment?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, in the school holidays it operates. Yeah,
that's great, because you can just walk along the meadows, you across the bridge in Hanbridge, and you're there, aren't you? So yeah, you do take these things for granted.
In general, I think we do need, and I have said this in previous, things that I've done. We do need to be a bit more positive, I think. I don't think Chester's going to be a ghost town, as people frequently are saying. Just go out at the weekend and you can see how busy it is.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to see encouraged in schools in Chester? Perhaps some kind of, to get them thinking about where they live, or get that positivity started from a younger age, really? Do you do anything with
that is a tough one. I'm not sure about that one. I think there's probably enough in the curriculum at the minute to be packed in. I think people's experiences of Chester, they're going to be the experiences they've had, growing up. When I think of myself growing up, it's memories of places like Toy and Hobby, which I used to love going in. I don't know if anyone remembers that one.
I do.
And if you live here, I guess the city will be. You'll always have your own special memories of what you used to do as a child, etc. I think the history of Chester is really interesting. People talk about Romans, but obviously it's a lot bigger than that. I think the Civil War in Chester is, I think people walk around and they don't realise what went on here. During that time, it was a pretty bad time, I think, for the residents. You can see the hole in the walls where the attackers broke through, which is in the Roman gardens, and people don't often notice that, but they did install an interpretation plaque in there. I think it was about 2014. So there is that. The Civil War definitely is talking about a bit more, because Chester are quite important during that period. But yeah, I think with Chester it's always just Romans, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of your association. So for you, it started as a Twitter account that you obviously took over, ShitChester, but this isn't your main career. This is a sideline. Is it something that is on your mind constantly, though? I mean, you must be seeing things all the time. Your phone's always. There is no. You live, breathe this.
When I go to work, I sort of turn off from it. and it's a nice sort of break for however many hours. But yeah, it's always on my mind.
Yeah.
Looking at things, planning events, looking at when I can fit different things in. Long term, when there's things to aspire to with the opening of the new market and the Northgate development, and the Christmas events which haven't been announced yet. Looking forward to things like that. But I plan my activity around it. We haven't seen a lot of events in the last year, but we will be seeing, I assume, next year events like the raft race will return.
Yeah.
I believe the Midsummer Parade is going to be running this weekend in a modified form. Hopefully we'll get the Christmas market back.
Yeah.
So dates, planning dates around the stuff that does go on. And you're right, it is always on my mind, but it's nice to be able to turn off occasionally.
Yeah, definitely. And interesting, you've kind of taken your personal self out of it. It's very much about the account. It's very much about Chester. You don't talk about yourself as an individual. Yeah. Is that because you almost don't want your own image to precede the account itself?
Yeah, that is a real conscious decision, because I don't want this to be about me. I do want it to be about the city. So I do like that aspect, that it's an everyman account, or every woman. It's anyone can tweet me, and I will generally retweet it and share it, and there's that sort of free exchange. Myself as a person, I don't, obviously aspects of my personality do seep in to the account, the tone and the coverage at times, but that's not what it's about. It is about Chester. My philosophy is, if a tweet can make someone laugh or make someone smile, then really it's done its job. If a tweet can make someone aware of an event, and I know I've done that many times, then that's worth it. That's worth it to that business or to that attraction. And I definitely have been doing a lot of promotion for different events, as you say, the cathedral recently. It's been good to get involved in, but I don't, my face is irrelevant, so I wouldn't be putting it out there or getting involved in stuff like that. And I do, where possible, try and stay in the shadows, because it's just not about that. It is, I guess you could say it is a personal account, but it isn't at the same time. It's just meant to be a thing, really, which is...
I think it's brilliant. I think what you've achieved is amazing, and the amount of meetings we've had with either prospect clients or clients who've mentioned your Twitter account, or have said, that would be potential to share there. And I think it's definitely become an account that people would want to, if they've got an event or something happening in Chester, they would absolutely want you to be sharing it or talking about it, because they realise the potential of it. With regards to the blog, do people contact you and ask to be on there, or do you?
Yeah, occasionally. Like, I've been contacted this week by someone that wants to feature, which I'm going to do next week. But sometimes I will target people. I'd say Lee Louise was one that I'd been after for a while, because I knew they had a great history, and they were happy to talk. I sometimes will approach people myself, new business, would you like to feature on the blog? And most of the time, they do want to feature. So some stories come to me. A friend might suggest, would you like to do a piece about this? The 20 questions one, which is what I started last year during the lockdown, that was a bit of a time filler. I thought, what can we do? We're not getting out anywhere. So I'd email the questions off, and we've done loads of prominent people, from the MP to members of the council, to Matt Baker recently did a great one, and about all his cultural work that he does. And that's something that will continue, because that's been a nice little sideline for me, and it's been really good. I like what you mentioned before about telling people's stories. For me, that is a key part of this, because I'm interested in people and their stories about their lives. And I've done a few which are sort of nostalgia pieces. I had a friend, and she was talking about her life in the nightclubs in the 1970s in Chester. So what I like about that one is that I've preserved her story now, presumably forever. While the internet lasts, that'll be there forever. And she's immortal now, I guess. There's another one that I did with a lady that sadly has recently died, and she was talking about how she had a stall in the old market. And it was quite moving, because they actually read some parts of it out at her funeral. So I do like that aspect, because I think I'm really interested in history myself, and looking back Chester of the past. I have many different guidebooks of 1930s, 1920s Chester. I like to collect old newspapers when I can, looking back at things like that. So this is my way of sort of contributing to, I guess it is social history, contributing to that, which is just one of the many elements of the account. So there's many different contrasts, which I guess can be a bit of a weird juxtaposition. One day you may see, a picture of some awful graffiti. The next day it might be a lovely sunset. The next day it's, this is my life in the 1960s. So yeah, I did one with another friend of mine. She was talking about how she went to see the Rolling Stones, etc., in Chester, all that kind of stuff. So it's a nice mix, and I try and keep it balanced, but it does depend on what's going on in the city at the time and how we can fit it all in.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I've noticed, and I don't know if you know what this is about, I've seen a lot of graffiti recently that says "Wake Up" all around Chester.
Yeah. I believe that's anti-vaccination sentiments.
I thought it might have some kind of.
Yeah, they've been very prolific with that. They're certainly getting out and about. I know the police have done an appeal yesterday. Again, that's. I don't think people want to see that. If people are entitled to their views.
Yeah, but it's not the most positive way to address it.
Maybe just write it once, so not 50 times. So, yeah, that's basically citywide, that one.
Yeah, certainly seen that one everywhere. I wasn't sure what that was about. Well, it's been fascinating. Is there any question that I've not asked you that you'd like to cover, or anything else you'd like to add to this?
Not really. I'm really happy that you've invited me on, and I personally feel privileged to have done the stuff that I've done over the last 8 years. I met so many great personalities, and I do feel privileged that I am able to report on stuff that goes on. And I take it seriously. It's something that I really enjoy doing, and I think it's important. And there's similar accounts in Chester that also do a great job, and I think people are all working towards the same goal of just making Chester the best place that it can possibly be. So if I can make my own personal contribution to that, then I'm happy. But I do feel privileged, and I've met so many great people doing it. Some friends that have become really important to me in my life that I met just through doing this, which is really, really positive.
I think it's fabulous. I think positivity, a bit of confidence is what we need, and I think you've done an amazing job with it. We've got lots of plans for campaigns that we're working on in and around the city, and would absolutely love to stay in touch with you and keep you part of it. I think there'll be a lot of people listening to this one intrigued to hear the voice behind the account. So thank you so much for taking time out your day, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you, ShitChester.
Thank you very much. Cheers.